All right, Kaira Jewel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Sarah. Good to be here.
And we always start our conversations with a personal check-in. So I'd love for you to share with us how you're doing at the levels of body, heart, and mind today, as well as where you're joining us from.
Yeah, I'm joining from the lands of the Munsee, Lenape, and Merrick peoples of Long Island. Aware that this land didn't come to me by their choice. I feel like I'm still transitioning to being back home. I was away in Europe for 12 days and I got home almost a week ago, but I still feel like I'm landing. And I'm well, and I'm noticing this. There was a kind of difficulty with our dog this morning where she's chewed things we treasure 2 days in a row now. So there was a bit of a drama this morning. And I'm noticing as I pause that's still kind of this sense of like, oh, I can't trust this being that I so love. And it's, in my house at any moment, she can destroy something. We got the vacuum cleaner out to pick up one of her messes and we left something out of the vacuum cleaner and she destroyed that. So we can't use the vacuum cleaner now. Anyway, it was one of those things. But overall, yeah, just a sense of still transitioning.
Where were you in Europe?
I was in Plum Village, the monastery in southern France, and spent a little time in Germany, and then Denmark.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I'm headed over there in about 10 days.
Oh,
I'm looking forward to it. Going to Amsterdam and southern France and Paris. Yeah. So we're here today to primarily talk about your new book, which encapsulates a lot of different threads. And it came out last November. And for those who are watching the video and hold it up, it's We Were Made for These Times, 10 Lessons for Moving Through Change, Loss, and Disruption. And towards the end of the book, you share that this title was inspired by a passage that you came across by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And I have that passage on page 109. I don't know if you have your book nearby. If you don't, that's fine. But and then I would love to read it if that's all right with you, this passage.
Sure.
So this was from Letter to a Young Activist During Troubled Times. My friends, do not lose heart. We were made for these times. I have heard from so many recently who are deeply and properly bewildered. Ours is a time of almost daily astonishment and often righteous rage over the latest degradations of what matters most. You are right in your assessments. Yet I urge you, ask you, gentle you, to please not spend your spirit dry by bewailing these difficult times. Especially do not lose hope. Most particularly because the fact is that we were made for these times. Yes, for years we have been learning, practicing, been in training for, and just waiting to meet on this exact plane of engagement. This passage speaks so well to these times. And obviously it struck you so much to name your book after it. Can you speak more about this passage and how it inspired this work of yours?
Sure. Yeah, it was so striking when I read it that we already have what we need for this moment, and that we're not supposed to be anywhere else. It was just this leaning in rather than leaning away when things are tough. That was the strength of a warrior that leans into the battle. And this teaching that everything we've been doing until now has prepared us to be in this moment. I share in that chapter that as a young person, my dad was in the civil rights movement, and as I read books about that experience, Alice Walker, different people, talking about being my age and being in marches and, really shifting the course of history. There was often such a longing to have been born at that time, to be able to make that kind of difference. And, reading this quote, Dr. Estes, this sense that there's not another time that we're supposed to be in, but the one we're in, that actually this moment has accumulated from all of the past moments, and we've been in those past moments too. And so we bring to this moment something that, only we can bring, because we have been, on this journey that's gotten us to here. And so each generation or each group has their inheritance to work on, and this is ours. So this kind of like wholehearted embracing of this moment. There's a saying by Master Lin Chi, one of the patriarchs, Zen and Chan Buddhism, says, "You already are what you want to become." Sense that what we need, we have it. So it's also like a really profound teaching on trust and stepping into our own shoes, stepping into this moment, not shrinking back, not discounting ourselves or each other too, because it's a we, not I, right? So like collectively, we also, different teachers talk about how we have everything we need, and scientists also, we have all the technologies we need, to all the wisdom, the capacity to take care of this very critical moment. It's just a matter of doing it. But like the technologies, the pathways are there to move out of this really dangerous time. I mean, not that everything can be kept as it once was, or things have already changed beyond what was a stable planet for millennia. That's already, we're past that point. But it doesn't mean that we don't really have many possibilities at our disposal that are already here. So we were made for these times is like on many levels true, in terms of just the human innovation and capacity to adapt.
Mm-hmm. And laced throughout this book is a story of a big transition that you underwent. And I've heard, I can't remember if it was in this book or I listened to in the interview with you on the 10% Happier podcast, where you described that time of your life, that huge transition, as like being in a birth canal. And and you didn't know like if you were going to make it through, how you were going to make it through. I really resonate with that. I'm just a couple of years, just emerging for the past couple of years from a similar period, different storyline, but same energetics. And I know that so many of us go through these passages of just major, major upheaval. And can you speak to us about just what that transition was and what it was like for you?
Sure. So yeah, the transition was becoming a nun and living as a nun for 15 years and then disrobing. So taking basically 4 years to figure out, did I want to continue or leave? 2 of those in the monastery, 2 years outside of the monastery to do that discerning. Yeah, it was this experience of being really clear about a path for, at age 25, I just really made this decision to become a nun, and I thought I would do that for the rest of my life. So I really had bought into that story. And then in my late 30s, that story started to shake under my feet, and I was not clear, what I was supposed to be doing anymore. And so that not knowing, that just the insecurity of having what I thought was a solid path start to buckle and move underneath me. And really not having a clear sense of what lay beyond if I were to leave, but feeling I really needed to explore and give it a at least start to check it out. Offered me a real opportunity to learn how to be comfortable in the discomfort of not knowing, like not really comfortable, but to realize I could be okay with profound unknowing and uncertainty, that I didn't have to know in order to feel safe, that I could just meet each moment, whatever it was, just on its own terms. And there was this sense of trust again that developed of, I may not know exactly where I'm headed, but I can trust that I need to make this one step. And this step, I'm being met, I'm being held. So now I can make this other step. And so just really kind of very, without a clear sense of the path, just moving one step at a time and feeling that I was guided, that I was being supported, whatever I was doing. And so I never looked back or regretted or thought I was doing the wrong thing. It was really like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I need to be doing this. And that began to get clearer and clearer until, okay, now I saw, okay, there is a path.
And what was it that made you decide to leave monastic life?
It was really a very deep yearning to be a biological mom, to have a child. And that just I didn't feel like it would be healthy to try to suppress. And even though I was very happy as a nun and very, I was able to do a lot, and that was very fulfilling to me, and make a difference for people and ways that I really appreciated. Yeah, it felt like I was just ruining something that was so well put together, and there wasn't anything clear on the other end. Like it wasn't, I didn't know if I could have a
Just no
child.
guarantees. Yeah.
Exactly. I didn't know if I would, yeah, I didn't know how I was going to make money. I didn't know where I was going to live, what I was going to do. But, I listened to that. And I think while that was the main text, there were subtexts too that were sort of came clearer later around individuating, because I had lived my whole life in community from birth to 14 and then 15 years in my adult life. And so I think part of it too was like learning to take care of myself and see what that was like outside of a community setting. But I did this motherhood journey and really kind of saw it to its end. I didn't have a child, but I had a big realization after 9 years of really focusing on how can I be a mom. The end of that 9-year journey was really letting go and seeing that need to have a child, that was important. I needed to do all the things I did to try to make that happen. And that led me to a deep awareness and acceptance that wasn't my path,
Mm.
to have a biological child. And so I could really be at peace with that. But I had to do many steps to get to that point. And none of them were, unnecessary. They all were important to get to that place of letting that go.
Yeah, I've been on a similar path.
Mm.
Yeah, many years of wanting to have a child, trying to have a child, and all of it leading me to the point of realizing this is not my path.
Wow.
And being at peace with that. And
Wow.
yeah, hearing you say that each of those steps was important. I hadn't really thought about that in terms of my own path, but I see that, yes, each step was important, because I wouldn't have come to the place that I am now without them.
Yeah. And as I look back, I can judge myself for being a bit compulsive or kind of attached to that idea. But then I can also see that I really needed to go through that journey. And I'm, I would do it differently with this awareness. Because there was so much pressure that I put on myself and the situations I was in, on my body, like.
And that's kind of part of the process, though.
Yeah, exactly. So this, like seeing all that, the compression of it. And then when I let go of it, this really lovely, like, I can just be, I don't have, like, I was surprised at how easy it was to accept that this wasn't going to be my path. Like I thought it would just be so devastating, but actually what I really experienced was a lot of freedom. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't have to put all my energy on trying to make this happen anymore. I can just be, anything can happen. It was this sense of like total, freedom, and like, wow, all these things I never thought I might do or be were now possible, because I wasn't trying to squeeze myself into this one path. And actually, right after that letting go, I was not looking for a relationship, but the person who I believe to be my life partner showed up into my life. And so I really see that, like, letting that go allowed space for this other thing to come in. But I wasn't looking for it. That was the thing. Like, I was just okay as I was. But then, okay.
Yeah, I'm struck by the parallels in our story because it's pretty much, yeah,
Wow.
same. I
Oh,
thought
that's
it would be
so
very
interesting.
devastating to let go of, and it wasn't, it hasn't been.
Mhm,
And then this wonderful relationship came in, and
mhm,
yeah, so I guess I didn't realize that part of your story, that
mhm,
was one of the big
mhm.
motivators to leave monastic life.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm also hearing, yes, the desire to individuate after
Mhm,
spending so much of your life in community.
mhm.
And then so once you made the transition, like what were some of the hardest parts of it for you? Because
Yeah.
life as a layperson,
Mm,
I've never had a monastic life. I've always like had an alter ego that has dreamt of that, but
uh-huh.
it just seems to be, I know that's not without its problems, but
Sure,
it's
sure.
just different realities.
Well, one of the things I really experienced, so I ended up after sort of I had an itinerant lifestyle for a few years after I left teaching and traveling, and then soon after I disrobed, I got an apartment, um, rented the basement of a dear friend's house in DC, and you know it was really like this sense of I had this buffer of protection around me as a nun, like living in the monastery. Everything around me was, it was a bit of a bubble. So we had all the same understanding of like the bell, moving mindfully, eating mindfully, times of silence. It was like not a rush, pressure, stress kind of the environment that we're usually in many, you know, urban places for sure. Um, and I didn't have a cell phone as a nun. I had an email address, but like people couldn't just call me. They had to call the office and then give me a message, and I'd call them back. So it was like really this sense of like, I wasn't just going out all the time. I there was like my room, and then there was the sisters area, and then there was the main area with the brothers, sisters, lay people, and then there was the world outside. But when I moved to this apartment, it was me in my apartment, and just opening the door, it was the world outside. There wasn't any kind of like transition time. And I was all by myself. And having grown up, as I mentioned, in community my whole life, um, this like realizing how much more uphill it was to have an environment that was um, really supportive of presence when it was just me. Um, and I would meditate, and I would do my yoga, and I would sometimes go walking mindfully in the park. But being in the monastery was just like having this stream that you could ride on that was going in the direction of relating mindfully to every part of your life. But when you were by yourself, it was like going upstream by yourself.
Yeah. And like you had to go
Um,
on retreat to find that kind of
exactly.
stream.
Exactly. So then I spent a lot of time going on retreat in those years, transitioning out of monastic life. But then, there were also, it was wonderful too. Like it was great to feel like, gosh, I'd never really, I mean, after college, pretty much I went to live in Plum Village. I had 6 months where I worked, but I never really, had to support myself financially. And so realizing, wow, I can do this, I can actually, it took a while to figure out how to, you know, earn income. But then just to kind of not, to gain confidence in that part of my life, because I hadn't really ever had to do that. I never paid taxes. I, you know, never had to set a fee of what I should charge for something. I mean, that was like so tough to do that, because I just didn't want to put up any barrier, or I had so many judgments about just charging money for something. Um, but then gaining some confidence in that I could do that, and yeah, so there were things that brought a sense of empowerment also, and there were, times too. I remember just like I realized I had never lived alone until I was like 40, 41 or 42 maybe. And I was like, I couldn't believe how painful it was to like eat alone day after day. And it was this like awakening moment too, of like so many people have this experience. Now, not everyone experiences it as a negative thing, maybe some people really have embraced that as a beautiful solitude, but I think a lot of people really do feel very lonely, and I hadn't ever really touched that. And so living alone, I also felt I'm glad to touch this, because I understand better what probably a lot of people experience. So that also sense of like being in solidarity more with, maybe a number of humanity's experience, especially in Western culture. So it was a lot of things. It was a lot of things. It was a very big adjustment of basically recreating a new sense of myself, but also feeling like the essence of what I was living as a nun wasn't changing, that like what I just continued to teach the Dharma full time. So I started a group in DC that met every week, and that was really fulfilling to begin to make deep connections and friendships with people, to really be a source of spiritual support, and to also lean on them over time, to feel like they were also there for me, and to begin to make really good friendships with people that I taught with and that I practiced with. Yeah, and so to kind of really realize like there's amazing practice everywhere. Like there are people doing courageous, beautiful things with integrity, letting go, forgiving, showing up fully everywhere. And that you can be in touch with those people even in the midst of a big city. It doesn't have to be in a monastery.
With you having just gone back to Plum Village recently, like, are there things about monastic life that you miss, or do you really feel just settled and at peace in being outside of that world now?
Hmm. The things I really loved about being a nun, being a monastic, were the ease of spontaneous, creative, fun moments. So we would gather and have a jam session, or create a play, or make a dance together. There would, you always had playmates, because there were so many of us. There were always people who would do something with you, or grab you to do something with them. And so I did less of that after I left the monastery. And that was always something. I grew up dancing and singing and being in plays and making music. And of course, even after I left, I was teaching and actually doing a lot of interplay, an improvisational form unlocking the wisdom of the body through movement and voice and storytelling. So I continue to do that and teach that. But you had to be much more intentional about creating a space for that to happen, and sort of, falling into a sister's room and just singing together, or we were so much together that it would just easily happen that we would be creative together. And so when I was back there this time, I got a chance to just join a impromptu singing session, singing in harmony and moving and singing, and it was just a really lovely experience. And I think, that was one of the things that I noticed after I left, was I didn't have as much playtime and creative time.
A lot more just work and life logistics. And, yeah. So getting back to your book, and you go through just a series of facets to help people orient during times of disruption, of change. And there's one chapter on resting back and trusting in the unknown. And I know this can be one of the most challenging parts of change, and one of the most challenging parts of where we find ourselves in the world right now. What are some key practices or perspectives that you want to name from the book that can help us to orient to this?
Well, one is that not knowing isn't bad, that we can feel so lost when we don't know. And there's so much, especially in our culture, so much value placed on having an answer and, having certainty. But there's actually a lot of power in not knowing. There's a fertility there, where when you do know, it's just one thing that's possible, just that one thing. But when you don't know, then anything is possible. Like, there's many more possibilities. So not framing the not knowing as a loss, as a lack. And then the other piece is, there are different levels of our consciousness. We talk about the store consciousness in Buddhist psychology. It's a part of our mind that's always holding and taking care of things. It's processing and registering and making sense of things. And we can have a question, have something we can't figure out, and we can entrust it to this deeper part of our consciousness to figure it out for us. And so that is something I really experienced, that I just couldn't think my way to an answer. That wasn't a good use of my mind power to try to think through something so mysterious and huge, like, should I stay a nun or should I leave? It was something that just needed time to unfold. So I talk about it in the book as like, these are questions, we all face in our lives, and we can think of them as like a seed. A seed can't realize what it's supposed to do if you keep holding it in your hand, trying to poke at it and figure out what it's going to be. A seed can only do its job if you plant it in the soil, water it, give it sun, and let it be. It needs time, it needs space, it needs your trust. that it's going to do what it needs to do. And so that question, whatever it is that we have, we can think of it like that, where we have to plant it in the soil of our store consciousness and let this other part of ourselves ripen it. And we just have to let go and trust it's going to come when it's ready to come. And what I really am aware of is that you have to be resting for that to happen. You have to be, not worrying about what the answer is gonna be, because that disrupts that process of the seed coming to fruition. So it's a real letting go, just trusting it's gonna come. The answer is gonna appear when it's right. And until that time, I just go about my life doing what I can do, which is practicing, being aware, being present, being grateful, paying attention, and not worrying, not trying to force something. And then when it's right, often when we least expect it, it's there. And so
it's a very like yin or feminine approach. And I'm hearing just a lot of those nature analogies of just trusting the cycles, the seasons of life. And when I'm working with clients, I work with a lot of clients who are going through big transitions, and they just think like it's never gonna end. It's never gonna change. I'm never gonna get out of it. And always reminding them, and I reminded myself when I was in their shoes, that like, spring always follows winter, and dawn always follows night. And it's like a pattern in the universe that we can trust, but it takes time. So another aspect that you speak about, and I think that is a big component of these transitional times in our lives, is strong emotions. And that can be also just one of the hardest things. And you wrote on page 55, what most needs attention is the part of us that we seek to avoid feeling. When we have tended to that, we are changed and the world changes with us. It's a quote that you shared from Dan Emmons. So can you share with us, just maybe even up to you, if you want to lead us through a short meditation or practice or some way to support being with strong emotions when they arise?
Yeah. Would you prefer a practice or need to share about it?
Whatever feels.
Yeah.
I'm open to either.
I'll share that I think what has really been very helpful for me is that noticing when there's a strong emotion and consciously orienting myself to turn towards it rather than to avoid it or to judge it or to let it sweep me away. So it happens so fast. It's not always easy to parse out what's arising and then what our response to it is. But there are those two different things. What is happening in terms of the emotion, and then how we choose to respond to it. And so when there's a painful emotion, a strong emotion, what always helps me is if I can accept that it's here, like make space for it and acknowledge it, and there's usually some story that's playing beneath the surface of some kind of aversion to what I'm experiencing. This shouldn't be here. Why is this like this? I want this to go away, or this is so and so's fault, or blame is also a way to get away from something. But if I can notice whatever my initial reaction is, which usually is not accepting and welcoming something painful. So I notice, okay, I'm having a reaction to what I'm feeling, and then can I just be with what I'm feeling? In its raw, awkward, very, tight, or, confusing, or whatever it is. Like, it's usually also embodied. So that's the other piece when I tune in, is to try to notice, how does it feel in my body? And can I really allow it to be here, however it is? Not asking myself to have it all together in this moment. And so, offerings, sometimes I'm able to kind of articulate what it is, like feeling uneasy, or feeling upset, or feeling humiliated, or whatever. It can be helpful to just kind of say, yeah, this is what's here. And I mean, the reason having a regular mindfulness practice of just being aware of what's happening day to day, moment to moment, it's so important before you get to this step, because it's a lot harder to be mindful when there's a strong emotion if you haven't been exercising that muscle in less intense situations, right? So, but that energy can really be a force that can embrace your strong emotion and can say, I'm here for you. I see you. I hear you. I feel you. And I'm holding you. Like, you don't have to go away. You don't have to, make it all look pretty. You can be as messy as you need to be, and I'm holding you. But you need something that you're cultivating on a regular basis that can hold the painful, sticky, slippery emotion. But it's possible. It's possible to cultivate that and to meet that with kindness and with care, and over time to just be with that emotion until it settles down enough till you get some kind of insight. Usually, well, I really think strong emotions, painful emotions, are teachers, and they come to teach us something that's not there on the surface. So we have to sit with them long enough that they will reveal what they're here to show us about ourselves, or to help us understand that we didn't understand about whatever, our parents, how we were raised, or a belief we need to let go of, or a deeper root than what we first understood was at the the cause of this. And so just sitting with it, being with it, there's a soothing, there's a releasing, there's a letting go, and then there's this often, I understand myself better because I've sat with this strong emotion. I mean, even in my relationship now with my husband, when we have a conflict, or we say things that are abrasive to each other, we'll sparse it out, and it'll be very revealing if we stay with the discomfort of it between us. Oh, well, I said this because this is how I was really feeling, and then the other person's, oh, right, that makes so much sense, and I said this, I reacted in this way because this was what was going on for me. And so we pull back layers and we understand each other better, we see each other's vulnerability, and it's so much easier to let go, or to, and then when I'm interacting with him in the future, that's an awareness that's created more space in me now, so that I am less likely to be dominated by my habit in that same way in the next situation, because we pulled back the layers of that one situation, so those habitual tendencies aren't as strong, they're stronger when they're hidden. So once we've each seen each other's like deeper insecurities or blind spots, it's like light has been shown on them and they're not quite as entrenched the next time around. So we'll catch ourselves earlier, or apologize right in the moment and be like, "Whoops, that's not what I wanted to say," or let me clarify, or whatever. So even between me and someone else, I can see how that the emotion reveals a great deal that really supports me to be more free. But I won't get there if I don't spend the time processing the emotion.
And you also speak to The Five Happiness by Sean Anker, which I thought were really, really simple, but really potent reminders during challenging times. Can you just share what those are with us?
Sure. So 5 things that have been researched and proven to increase our happiness that we can do every day. One is to pray or meditate. Another is to exercise. Another is to be aware of three things we're grateful for. A fourth one is to practice a random or conscious act of kindness, so not expecting anything in return. And a fifth one is to journal a moment of happiness. So at the end of the day, to look back and see what was a happy moment, and to really let that in and kind of relive it and allow it to really sink in.
Mm. And now you weave together mindfulness and Buddhism and social justice. What does that look like for you as you weave mindfulness and Buddhism with social justice?
Well, it changes, but I run a fellowship for BIPOC youth activists, a 2-year fellowship, leading retreats with a co-teacher, offering online. We do online things on the month that we're not meeting in person for retreats, but it's really exploring and practicing together how social justice is spiritual practice and spiritual practice is social justice, that they're not two things. And I think creating community is a way of doing this as activism as well. So with my husband, we're creating a Buddhist Christian community of meditation and action. We meet every month. The last Monday of the month, usually it's on Zoom, and we share our Buddhist and Christian traditions, but we also are moving towards a retreat center that can also be a place of ecological sanity and love with the earth, growing food and caring for the land as we practice a really committed spiritual path, and share that with others. And then there's work that I do in environmental, ecological, earth justice spaces of connecting Buddhist communities to awareness of our planetary world and needs, and then also connecting those who are acting on behalf of the planet, connecting them with the spiritual path. So kind of weaving in between those, bringing them together more and more and being part of spaces where they aren't separate. So there's communities I'm a part of, like the Earth Holder Sangha in the Plum Village tradition that does actions and studies and community building around caring for the planet. And then there's One Earth Sangha in the Vipassana tradition that I'm a part of that raises awareness in Buddhist communities about climate crisis. And there's activist groups that I'm part of, and yeah.
And what's your current growing edge, just as a woman, as a practitioner?
I think it's something to do with this need for space, this wanting to really be engaged, but also really be happily disengaged, in the sense of connecting with this truth that everything is okay in this moment. I don't have to become something else. I don't have to run. I don't have to be something other than I am. So this, this paradox of resting in the moment, being engaged, being attentive to what I feel my purpose is here, but also not being enslaved by my views about what, that sense of always having to be worrying about the next thing. And so this I'm moving. I think sometimes it feels like I'm making progress in terms of creating more space in my life for just downtime, for nothing, for being in nature, for enjoying. But I also, my edge really is also not filling the space with more stuff, and just really enjoying the not doing.
And where can listeners learn more about you? And is there anything upcoming that you want to share with us?
Sure. So I have a website, which is my name, kairajewel.com. And I have a newsletter. You can sign up for that on my website. I'm teaching retreats. I have a BIPOC retreat in September at Barry Center for Buddhist Studies. It's a Buddhist Christian retreat. I'm teaching with a Black woman clergy. And then there's a nature retreat that I'm teaching with Mark Coleman at Spirit Rock in the fall, in November. but I would encourage folks who are interested in a Buddhist Christian experience to join our monthly group. You could just drop in one time to, lots of places. If you're BIPOC and you want to come to a weekly BIPOC meditation group Thursdays at noon Eastern, that's through Garrison Institute. I'm there with my co-teacher Maricela Gomez. We take turns leading that. So there's a couple different places.
Great. And I also want to encourage listeners to get a copy of your book, We Were Made for These Times. And each chapter it ends with meditation instruction, like pretty extensive meditation instruction, as well as journaling prompts. So there's definitely help to just apply these teachings to your life and your practice. So thank you. Thank you for your time today, Kaira Jewel. Thank you for the work that you're doing in this beautiful book.
Thank you so much for inviting me and for your interest in the book. I appreciate that.
Yeah.